The following is a video presentation to overview how online survey data could be brought down and combined with physical data from other surveys. So there's 4 points that need to be covered, and they're seen here. So the first thing, of course, is logging into your survey account, noting some of the status of the survey, like how many people have responded to it, obviously very important. You then want to go and collect the information from the survey, and it depends on which type you use as to how it'll exactly work, but essentially you want to shut down the survey, the tool, and then go to where the information is allowed to be downloaded. So in this case, go to Analyze Results and find out where it allows you to save the information. Once you get to that location, then you're going to save a particular format, typically raw data in a summarized form. It's very important to protect anonymity and make sure that then the people who were involved in the survey, that their personal identities are no longer connected. So you're going to download the information into a file. Sometimes that file will be an Excel file or something else. In this case, it predisposes you to download a folder, and in that folder are actually a couple of different formats of the data. In our case, we will use the Excel version. But first you have to open the folder if it was a zipped folder, and that zipped folder, all you do is right-click on it, or you have to get to it, and then you extract. And once you extract it, then you can find the files. In this case, we do have Excel files, and we want the one that's specifically Excel. So once you open the data file, you'll look through it and try and see if it's what you want. This case, it is what we want, and then eventually you will want to save it to whatever location and whatever name seems appropriate. Typically using a date in the name is a good idea in case you have multiple downloads on multiple days. And of course, if you have more than one source, you're going to want to name the file based on the source of the survey data. All right, so let's just walk through the steps here of making sure the data is prepared. The raw data comes with statements, and those statements are not really what we want to use for analysis. Some people will, but in our case, what we're going to do is code everything according to the statement so that it makes it shorthand. We can always refer back from the codes to the original statements when we get to the point of actually doing conclusions. But it's very wordy inside of Excel if you have these big long things to deal with. Columns have to be wider and so on. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to set up some VLOOKUPs and take the data from a transposed file and put it in to here and then convert it. Of course, you have to go and get the original data. We'll copy it from where it came to in another place into our automatically prepared or already pre-prepared spreadsheet, which has the conversions in it. So go ahead and copy that data from the file that we downloaded from the survey, from the website. So then once we have it and we can paste it into our other spreadsheet that is set up to do the processing of the data, we will see that we have a lot of things here that we probably don't need. Some of them are some things we can get rid of. But let's go ahead and transpose the data. Transposing the data allows us to do things. There are things you can do with a column that you can't do with a row. All right, so let's finish this and then we'll start into the next step. Once we do that, then we can go back to that sheet that had all the lookups in it and paste it in there. And we have to copy it over until we are sure that we have a column of VLOOKUP formulas for every column of data from our transposed folder. We can check that. We'll know if we go too far because the formulas will stop working when we've copied it farther than the extent of which we have data. So just take a look around and you'll see that we have now got a converted data file. Welcome to the physical data collection process. Here's a sheet that should look familiar to you. We have all of the formulas in here to go grab everything from all the different sheets into one. We have place for 20 for A1, A2, etc. because we can have up to 20 surveys coming in each one. And there's the very complex formula that you can stop and read that goes and gets everything. So where is it coming from? Well, we set up a start and end sheet so that there's no question of where things go. Now let's go open the actual data. It's in various sheets from different groups. Unfortunately, it's not labeled correctly, so let's go down here and rename this sheet before we get it anywhere to know that this is in fact group A2. We'll do A-2, and that tells us when it gets over into the main sheet that that's whose data it is. Move or copy, and we change to the collection. It goes, like I said, between start and end, and we'll probably put them in order. Now, before the sheet is the one selected, so you do before end. Okay, and it should very quickly show up in our other sheet. There it is, between start and end. And we come back, and we would expect to see the things show up automatically, but there are over 10,000 of these calculations, so it takes a little while. Look at the bottom, calculating, 4 processors, 6, 8, and so on %. So this takes a little while because of all the recalculating that's going on. So we're going to take a little break here, and we'll come back, and sure enough now we're up to 90-some %, and then it shows up. That's how all of the sheets are done. So this is the sheet with the data from the different groups. Because I have all those formulas, I'm going to paste this now with just the values, and I want to choose the formats. So, okay, so this will bring over the values, formatted values, and then I've got to get rid of I've got to get rid of what is not good. I'm just showing you some here. I'm going to have a whole bunch to get rid of, but I'll skip that. Okay, so this is the last set of bad columns. Now they're empty or bad data columns because there wasn't data in the original file in those locations. But here now, as you can see, is good data. Now one of the things I've got extra here because of the indirect function, I've got column headings and row heads that were used in the indirect function, and I can get rid of those. And now I can do some extra formatting. Column size is great. I'm now going to go and get the data that was converted from online. You can notice that this is coded differently, and it may have different rows, so I need to make sure it's going to match up correctly. So if you notice, there's an extra column, I think, or I'm sorry, an extra row, so I got to get rid of that row. So I go back, and once I think it lines up, I copy the main headings, and I'm going to put them in the blank column that I have beside the headings for the physical data, and then I need to compare them. So they start to match up, and then I see some places where it doesn't. So here's a blank. So we need to figure out what's going on. So earn a degree is down 1 from where it should be. And then likewise, I'll see several places where I have blanks, and that makes the data not line up. If I was to paste the data over from the other file, I can see that it wouldn't line up with what's here. And then there's the stuff at the bottom I don't need as well. So let's go back and see what we can do to make it line up. So we go in and get rid of the blank rows. So just go down, it's a right click on the row number where the blank rows are. Remember, the data is consistent as long as I keep it in its rows. So if I delete a whole row, all of the correct data moves up with the heading all the way down. And then there's some stuff at the very bottom that we really didn't seem to have comments come across. We can check that later, but for now let's just clean that out of there and not worry about it. Okay, so once it's clean, we try again, copying the headings over, pasting them in the column. Okay, and now we can look through the column and see how things match up. There still seem to be some issues. Let's take a thorough look. Okay, so what's happened here is I have regrouped in the one file. I regrouped all the warmth items, all the warmth true items together, all the warmth important items together, and so on. But in the other sheet, that is not the case. They are not yet sorted that way. So that's going to have to be changed as well so that it will match up. So let's get rid of our headings and go back over and see what can be done to resort things. And the process of sorting basically involves right now hunting down all the true warm items, cutting them, and then using insert cut cells. Again, because I'm selecting the whole row, and it's important to select the whole row, all the data that applies to a particular item moves with it, and because I'm just moving them up and down, I'm not moving them in any different columns, so the data stays consistent. All right, one more time, let's verify it by copying and then we'll go and paste it, and we'll walk through every item and make sure that we have them correct. Sometimes you can use conditional formatting to check these kinds of things. You'll probably get a chance to see that before we're done. All right, everything looks pretty good. So if we get to the point where we're sure that the headings are fine, then we can go up and eliminate one of the two columns. Because the columns from the other sheet are more detailed, why don't we keep those, and we'll get rid of the abbreviated version, which was in the data entry sheet for the physical file. Let's see, what else needs to be looked at? Well, if you look here, what's missing? We need the groups. We need the group IDs. If we go back over to the original data from online, it has it. We just didn't bring it in. So we need to fix that. We do that in the conversion tab. What we need to do is pick up the row, the information from the row above the current academic status, because that's where the group code is. What we're going to do is actually, if you see it, comes over as a 0. The group code comes as a 0 if there's nothing there. So we've used isBlank before. So I'm going to do a formula here where it's going to check and see if the correct cell over in the raw data transposed. If the transposed data cell is blank, then we're not going to bring anything over, or we'll make it blank. But then if it is correct, then we will bring over the group code. We want credit, or students want credit for the surveys that they did. Once the formula is correct, then it can be copied across, and now we will have codes for every one of the columns that has one. Some people enter data without actually entering the group code. So some groups are not going to get credit for some of their surveys. Once all of the group codes are in, we already know that the rows match up, so we can go ahead and copy the columns of all the transposed data from the online survey. And then we're going to go back over to our new combined data file location. We've already got the physical survey data, but we want to add the additional columns with the data from the online survey that are now all matched up in terms of having the right information in the right places. So we have some things that don't quite match up. What do we do when we still don't have a perfect match between what's online and the physical? Well, one of the things to do is obviously make it so that we can see everything properly. And we'll use freeze panes to make sure we can see the group IDs and the row descriptions so that we know what each data row is about. Once we do that, we can run through our data and find the places where things don't quite match up. So if we have code problems, we're going to need to fix them. Let's go find our codes as they originally were. We need to move things around a little bit and just make it easy to see them as we use them. What we'll do is do search and replace. So you got to do Control F. We'll bring up find. But first we have to highlight the area that we are going to do replacing in. Let's just do the first set of, definitely not, probably not, that kind of coding. So if we see over the B is the codes that we want, column D is what we want to replace with. So DN should be 2, replace all, and it only does the replacements in the highlighted area. And so we're safe to do P, and that's all it is code, so it's only going to replace that. And PN is 1, good. We had 72 of those, and so on. There's U, N, P, and D that need to be done, but you don't need to see all that repeated. Now, next, we need to highlight the whole area because we have a bunch of NRs scattered around. So all of this is code that's now being selected. I'm sorry, this is all data, and we're going to look through this whole area for NR. So we got to put in NR, and NR basically we leave blank, but we need only where NR is by itself. So that's where we match the whole thing. We don't want NR in something else, and we've got a big area selected. So replace with nothing, replace all, and so that should take care of all of our NRs. Now, there is another area down here. You're not going to probably convert these, but they are more to do, so let's take a look at how we could do that. So I'm selecting a row here, just the one row, which means the one item. And that one item can have, if you look on the left now, we have S, A, and L, and it should be -1, 0, and 1. So find the A's, and again, it has to match the case because A is found in a lot of things, including perhaps prefer to leave TWU. So we just want where that's a code by itself in a cell. So we got those. So that's another example. We can go down to the next one, and that's going to be the LS, SP, SL, and RL. So again, by now doing a row, we can go and find the LS's again, match the whole cell, and so on. And I'm quickly going through and making sure that you see how to do this. Okay, so there we go. And that's about it. That's the last of the codes that we could replace, but then there's the issue of error. So after you've done code replacement, you go back through your data and you look for where conversions didn't happen. And you're going to find, look at that. We certainly have something that it doesn't make sense here. We know these were not converted because we did find a place for the codes that were in the actual columns, and as you can see here, we have none of the bad ones. So what do you do when you have bad data? Well, this column here is so bad, I think this one's just getting thrown out. It really, we still have a record of it in the original data, but here in our converted version, let's just get rid of it. On the other hand, we have a series here of n's in one set of data for one item. What is n? Good question. Not any idea. Suppose it might be no response, but it doesn't say that. So we'll just blank it out and then identify that this is an area to check because we're not so far removed because this is physical data. We can go back and check with the A6 people and find out what was meant here. But we want to remember, we don't want to do anything about it right now, so we just leave a comment to ask that group to interpret the letter N. Besides that, inserting a comment there, we've got these other situations, L and A. L and A we had, right? Didn't we have L and A? So why is that not correct? And here's an LP. So this kind of looks like maybe they flip things around. Let's take a look at what happened. We got some of those highlighted, and we go back over, and what it seems like is while those are valid codes, they're in the wrong row. So with them being in the wrong row, the chances are that we can, again, get the people to interpret them for us that collected that survey data, but we're going to need to ask them in particular. So we're not going to remove these ones. We're not going to delete that stuff. Maybe we shouldn't have deleted the ends either. But in any case, these are the kinds of errors that we probably can correct, so we don't want to get rid of it.